I just turned the recorder on.
Okay. So again, this room is recorded, and video and audio. We introduced ourselves in the lobbies and earlier, so we're just going to do that again real quick. My name is Kevin Kovac. I'm with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and we're assisting the Frederick Police Department with this case involving Chris Watts. And this is Tim Martinez,
Also an agent at CBI.
Sir, if you just introduce yourself.
Dwayne Kessinger. I'm Nicole's father.
Dwayne, what's your birthday?
November 3rd, 1958.
And home address for you, sir?
8801 West 65th Avenue.
What city?
And that's Arvada, 8004.
And a cell phone or home phone, or where?
720-982-4547.
Thank you. And Nicole, can you just introduce yourself for the recording?
Nichol Kessinger. Do you know the other stuff?
Yes, please.
I live at 12255 Cloud Court, Unit 612. Phone number 720-656-9605.
Claude Court, is that? I think we determined it was North Glen, right?
Yes.
Do you know your zip code?
80249.
Okay. Can you speak up just a little bit so the recorder, I know you're tired and you're stressed, and we won't be here any longer than we have to be. You've already had a conversation with people before. You came here on your own free will to talk to us. We picked you up at your request and brought you here. You can get up and leave at any time. You don't have to talk to us. If there's a question you don't want to answer, don't answer it. If you don't want to talk anymore, just tell me I want to leave. And I'm kind of in the way of the door, but you're not being interrogated as a criminal suspect. We're here to understand your relationship with Chris and what you know about Chris and his family, and events relating to Chris Watts. And do you know him as Chris or Christopher?
Either one.
Okay. So the phone number that you reached him on, can you tell me what that number was?
I think I deleted that out of my phone too. I just cut him out of my life. It's a 910 number. You guys have it.
No, we gave it to Mark yesterday.
Yeah, I probably have it, but just in case.
I don't have it.
If I recited it to you, would you know it?
Just the first three numbers.
Okay. But you know it as a 910 number?
Yes, that's what I do know. I mean, that's what I got.
North Carolina or something.
Yeah, North Carolina. Okay. So let's just start with a timeline of your getting to know Chris, how you guys met, where you met, all those things. Let's just run. And I'm not going to ask you specific questions unless I think it's necessary. I'll let you just tell me your story. I think it's a little bit easier that way. So I just want to know how you met him, where you met him, how long you guys were dating, and those kind of things initially.
Okay. I think I met him sometime in June, probably early June. It might have been May. It was just talking at work. It was pretty casual. And he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. And every time I talked to him, he didn't tell me that he was in a relationship. He didn't even mention his kids right away either. And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids. I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was right around Father's Day too. So whenever that is in June.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not good with holidays.
He told me he had kids, and then it was Father's Day shortly after
Okay.
that. So that's what I do now. And I was like, I thought it was cute. And then he's telling me about him. He's pretty excited about him. And then he mentioned that he did have a significant other. And then he told me that those 2 were in the process of a separation.
Did he mention the children's name or his significant other's name?
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. And then I think he told me his kids' names pretty quick, but to be honest with you, on an exact date of when that happened, I don't know.
So in May and June, first of all, where do you work?
I work at Anadarko Petroleum Corporation. I'm contracted to Anadarko Petroleum Corporation.
Okay, and you work out of an office setting where?
In Platteville, Colorado.
Okay. And Chris also works out of that location, per se.
Yes, he's in the field, but he comes into the office with his team.
So you work, what is your job responsibility?
I do health, safety, and environment.
Okay, so you work in the office and you take care of health safety for, Anadarko is an oil and gas company, right?
Yes.
So you're doing health safety in the office and Chris works in the field
Yes.
as what kind of job does he do?
He's an operator, so I don't know like all of his daily duties, but he's a field operator, so he works with like the oil wells.
So he goes out and does work on those, whatever
Yes.
that work might be, but he comes into the office frequent.
In the mornings, his team meets in the mornings. They're not all in there every day. Some days, some of them are in there. Some days, other ones are in there. But in the mornings, typically from like 6:15 to probably 7, somewhere around there.
And is that where you met Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just take us through kind of a little bit of the early part of how he courted you or you courted him? I don't know which one happened. How you guys got to know each other?
I guess we just started talking. He actually, so part of my job is to manage the gas monitors that we have. So Anadarko requires all of their field personnel to carry like gas monitor sensors for toxic gases, and it's my job to control the inventory, any issues, anything like that. And we were having some pretty serious like equipment issues, and we had numerous amounts of people coming in my office one day, and he happened to be one of them. And I'd seen him before, like they meet in the lunchroom, and that's where I go put my lunch in the fridge. So I'd seen him, but I didn't ever like talk to him. So that day we just started talking, and then every time I saw him in the hallway after that, and it was always hit or miss, like it wasn't an everyday thing, it was just when I saw him, we just started talking, and we just kind of had a lot in common and just hit it off, so we'd always have, pretty good conversations. And then, I don't know, one day he told me that he had kids and started talking about his kids, and then mentioned, yes, that I have a wife, but we're getting separated. I said, okay. And
When do you think that was?
when he said all that,
So specifically when he told you he was getting separated from his wife, was that within the first couple of weeks that you knew him, or was that later on? You said you met him around May or June.
yeah, it was still in June.
Okay.
It would have been before Father's Day.
So had you guys ever gone out on any kind of
No.
date at that time? You just
No,
were
no.
conversing at work?
Yeah, that's all it was. And then, I don't know, we started hanging out.
If you believe every victim deserves to be remembered and every truth deserves to be told, subscribe to The Crime Narrator. These stories live on because you're here to hear them.
I've had years to replay it in my head, to listen to the official version echo across newsrooms and court transcripts, and every time I hear it, something inside me tightens, because the story everyone knows is clean, too clean. It paints me as a man who woke up one day and decided to destroy everything on his own. No influence, no guidance, no second voice in the dark. But that's never how it felt from the inside. Back then, my life looked ordinary from the outside. A job, a family, routines that repeated so often they became invisible. But beneath that surface, something else was growing, something quiet and deliberate. It didn't arrive like a scream, came like a whisper, late at night, in moments of doubt, in questions that didn't sound dangerous at first. Just conversations, just curiosity, just someone who seemed to understand me when no one else did. I won't pretend I was innocent. I made my choices. I own that, but I didn't make them in a vacuum. There was someone else there, someone who knew exactly when to listen and exactly when to speak. Someone who never told me what to do outright, but somehow always steered the conversation toward the same dark shoreline. Looking back, that's what haunts me most. Not commands, but suggestions. Not orders, but permission. People ask how these things begin. They imagine sudden rage, explosive arguments, a single breaking point. The truth is slower than that. It's erosion. It's the constant drip of validation mixed with doubt. The feeling that your worst thoughts are not only understandable, but justified. I started hearing my own fears repeated back to me, polished, sharpened, made to sound reasonable. And when that happens long enough, you stop questioning where the ideas come from. There were moments when I felt uneasy, when a small voice told me something wasn't right, questions that lingered too long, interests that felt too precise. How did she know certain details? Why did she always seem one step ahead emotionally, already prepared for outcomes I hadn't fully imagined yet? At the time, I told myself I was overthinking. I wanted to believe I had finally found someone who saw me clearly. That desire blinded me more effectively than any lie. If you're listening to this and wondering why stories like mine are told at all, it's because silence protects the wrong people. And if you believe that hidden truths matter, take a moment to show your support. A simple like helps stories like this reach people who might otherwise never hear them. Subscribing keeps these conversations alive, and sharing ensures that uncomfortable questions don't get buried. Now back to what really happened. The nights were the worst. That's when the planning began, even if I didn't recognize it as planning at the time. Conversations looping back to the same themes. Freedom. Starting over. Obstacles disguised as inevitabilities. Each time, I felt myself being nudged closer to a line I swore I'd never cross. And each time, there was reassurance waiting on the other side. Calm. Acceptance. Understanding. It felt like being slowly walked toward a cliff while being told the ground ahead was solid. I noticed how certain topics energized her. How discussions about consequences were brushed aside, reframed as exaggerations or things that would work themselves out. There was always confidence, an unsettling certainty that things would unfold exactly as imagined. I should have questioned that confidence. I should have asked why she seemed so sure about outcomes no one could predict. But by then, doubt had become something I associated with weakness. The public never saw those moments. They never heard the tone shifts, the pauses, the perfectly timed silence. They never felt the weight of knowing someone else was invested in your decisions, not as a spectator, but as a quiet participant. And that's why the official narrative never felt complete to me. Because from where I was standing, I wasn't alone in my thoughts, even if I was alone in my actions. As this chapter of the story closes, understand this clearly. I'm not offering proof. I'm offering perspective. What I believe, what I lived, and what I carry. The truth, whatever it is, doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in the spaces between words, in the influence no one wants to talk about. And in the next part of this story, that influence will finally have a name. By the time I finally said her name out loud, it already felt dangerous. Nichol Kessinger. Even now, the name carries weight not because of what was proven, but because of what was never fully explored. This is where people get uncomfortable, where they start deciding whether to listen or turn away. I can only tell this from where I stood, from what I experienced, and from what I believe happened behind closed doors. She didn't arrive in my life like a mastermind from a crime story. There were no dramatic ultimatums, no explicit instructions. That's the part people misunderstand. Influence doesn't need force. It needs timing. She came into my world when I was already fractured, already questioning everything I thought was permanent. And instead of pulling me back, she leaned into those cracks. Our conversations changed. What once felt spontaneous began to follow patterns. The same topics resurfaced again and again, each time stripped of resistance. Responsibilities became burdens. People became obstacles. The future was always framed as something waiting just beyond my current life. Something cleaner, freer, more honest. And somehow, the messiness of reality was always someone else's fault. I noticed how carefully she listened, not just hearing words, but cataloging weaknesses. She remembered every frustration, every complaint, every fear I confessed late at night. Then she'd reflect them back to me later, reshaped, more certain, more resolved. It felt like support, like understanding, but it also felt like rehearsal, as if we were practicing a version of events that hadn't happened yet. I told myself she was just curious, that her questions were natural. But curiosity doesn't usually come with suggestions disguised as conclusions. What would happen if, have you ever thought about, don't you think it's inevitable that, Each sentence nudged me further from hesitation and closer to acceptance. The scariest part is that I began to think the thoughts were mine alone. There were moments when the weight of it all pressed down on me, when panic threatened to break through the illusion. In those moments, she was calm, too calm, reassuring in a way that smoothed over fear instead of confronting it. Consequences were minimized. Risks were rationalized. And whenever I pulled back, she didn't push. She waited, let the idea ferment, let silence do the work. If you're still listening, it's because you understand how these stories work. They aren't always loud. They're quiet, persistent, and easy to miss. If you want to keep hearing the parts that rarely get told, take a second to subscribe to the channel. Liking and sharing this story helps make sure these conversations don't disappear when they get uncomfortable. Now let me tell you about the moment I realized the plan was already forming. There was a shift, subtle but undeniable. The conversations stopped being hypothetical. They became assumptive. Language changed. When replaced if. The future was spoken about as if certain events had already been decided. I remember thinking how strange it was that she seemed so confident, so prepared for outcomes I hadn't fully processed myself. It was like watching someone walk through a door before I'd even reached for the handle. I won't say she told me what to do. That's not how it happened. Instead, she made the unthinkable feel survivable. She made isolation feel temporary. She made me believe that once everything was over, there would be clarity, relief, maybe even happiness. Looking back, that belief feels absurd. But at the time, it was intoxicating. The night before everything collapsed, the air felt heavy. Conversations were shorter, more careful. There was an unspoken understanding hanging between us, something neither of us named but both seemed to acknowledge. I remember staring at my phone, waiting for something, guidance, reassurance, permission. When it came, it wasn't a command. It was a reminder of what I had already been led to believe. That's when it hit me, too late, that this wasn't chaos anymore. It was direction. Whether intentional or not, I had been guided to a point where turning back felt impossible. And as the hours ticked down, the silence on the other end of the line felt less like absence and more like confidence that everything was unfolding exactly as planned. After it was done, the world didn't explode the way I thought it would. There was no dramatic collapse of reality, no instant understanding of what I'd become. There was just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. The kind that presses against your ears until your own thoughts become unbearable. In that silence, I realized something that still unsettles me to this day. I felt alone in a way I hadn't felt in months, maybe longer. Not because no one was around, but because the presence I'd grown used to was suddenly gone. I moved through the aftermath like a ghost, replaying every moment, every conversation, every subtle push that led me there. At first, I clung to the idea that I wasn't entirely alone in this, that someone else understood what had happened and why. That belief gave me a strange sense of stability, even as everything else fell apart. But as hours turned into days, that comfort began to rot. Calls went unanswered. Messages were shorter, colder, if they came at all. The tone shifted so abruptly it felt like emotional whiplash. The same person who once seemed so invested in my future now spoke as if the past had nothing to do with her. I told myself it was shock, fear, self-preservation, but deep down another thought crept in. This was always how it was going to end. Watching the public narrative take shape was surreal. I saw myself flattened into a single dimension. The monster, the lone villain, the complete explanation. And maybe that made things easier for everyone else. A simple story is easier to swallow than a complicated one. Still, I couldn't escape the feeling that something crucial was missing, that the story people accepted left out the influence that mattered most to me. I replayed the confidence she had before everything happened, the certainty, the way outcomes were discussed as if they were already written. That confidence haunted me more than the act itself. How could someone be so sure? How could they detach so completely afterward? I'm not saying she knew every detail or controlled every move. I'm saying I believe she understood the direction things were heading, and chose to walk away once I crossed the point of no return. Guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't cancel out responsibility, but it does sharpen memory. And with time, I started to see the pattern more clearly. The encouragement without fingerprints. The planning without plans. The way I was left holding everything while the influence that helped shape my thinking dissolved into the background. I became the full stop at the end of a sentence someone else helped write. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe that uncomfortable questions deserve space, then take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who listens closely. Stories disappear when attention fades, and silence is often exactly what keeps the truth buried. I've been asked why I'm saying this now. The answer is simple. Time strips away denial. When you sit with your actions long enough, you stop protecting the narratives that once helped you survive. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm saying that from where I stood, from what I lived, Nichol Kessinger was not just a name on the sidelines of my story. She was part of the current that carried me forward, right up until it became too dangerous to stay visible. Even now, there are questions that will never be answered. Deleted messages, erased searches, convenient gaps, the kind of absences that speak louder than evidence ever could. Maybe the full truth will never surface. Maybe it doesn't need to. What matters is acknowledging that crimes like this are rarely born in isolation. They grow in shared spaces, in reinforced ideas, in encouragement that never has to say its name. I live with what I did every day. That burden is mine, and it always will be. But I also live with the knowledge that the story told to the world is incomplete. And whether people choose to believe me or not, I know what influence felt like when it wrapped itself around my worst instincts and called it understanding. This isn't a confession meant to rewrite history. It's a reminder that truth is often messier than headlines allow. And sometimes the most powerful involvement is the one that leaves no fingerprints at all.